Hey everyone, this is Ryan from Bolin Development, and I'm posting this video as a companion to a blog that I'm releasing at the same time, in which I want to talk about the positive things that are happening since I've gotten an ADHD diagnosis. And I know that doesn't sound exciting to find out that you have ADHD, but it's something that I had a concern about for a long time. I've had some things that have really affected me my entire life that I couldn't overcome through sheer willpower or discipline. And I talk a lot about that in the blog. I'm not going to rehash everything in the blog here, but I just wanted to share that this has been a really positive experience for me. And I wanted to put out this video and this blog to communicate for anybody who's going through something similar to this or has gone through something similar to this, that there are others of us out there. I know that this is something that's starting to gain a lot of traction. I myself follow a lot of ADHD content creators and people who are out there doing awesome work to share really positive tips and just stories to help people that are neurodivergent, meaning our brains don't work in the neuronormative way, right? Helping us to live fulfilling lives and, overcome these things that are kind of unintended consequences of our behavior and our thought processes and things like that. So, the thing that drove me to do this in the first place was I have always kind of been a person who has a lot of stress. Even if things are going well, my mom says that I'm kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I would agree with that. That's kind of the ongoing feeling that's always in my brain, is that, yeah, things may be going good, but eventually something's going to happen. And going through this journey to get a diagnosis was largely coming to terms with how I feel and why that anxiety is so big in me. And something I share in the article is that in August 2021, I went out for a run, and it was hot, but it wasn't hotter than any other day. I was drinking water, I was staying in the shade, but about halfway through my run, I just started to feel really fatigued. And I had noticed before I even went outside, I was trying to tell Bailey a story. Bailey is my wife. I was trying to tell her a story and couldn't remember any of the details. I just kept saying, and then, and I said, I'm pretty tired. I'll go for this run. And then when I come back inside, I'll probably take my shower and take a nap and just kind of get some rest. I think it was a Friday, or it may have been the beginning of the week. I don't really remember. It was during the summer. And when I come back in for my run, I had noticed that my hands were tingling and they had gotten numb. Even though it was, well into the 90s, my hands felt like ice cold, right? And when I tried to express to her how I was feeling, I couldn't form sentences. I was saying things, but they didn't make any sense. And what was going on in my brain was not coming out of my mouth. So my wife, she's an occupational therapist, thinking quickly, she says, hey, go get in the car. We're going to the hospital. Excuse me. So immediately we rushed to the hospital. They put me through the stroke protocol thinking that I had some kind of TIA, and we go through that. They do all the stuff where they hook me up and send a tracer through my blood to kind of figure out, so they can map and do all the CAT scan kind of stuff to figure out what's going on. They sent me to a room and they kept me overnight. And I got the best news in the morning that you can get in that situation, that there was no damage. There was nothing to suggest that I had a stroke. But the doctor was like, this was definitely caused by stress. And he kind of talked me through, a plan of care, and then really pushed me to go to counseling, which is something that had actually just started around that time. And so I started going to counseling, and as I talked through some of these stressors with my counselor, it became really apparent that the reason I was always so stressed out is because the behaviors that I struggle with most in my life were some of the things, some of the things that I held most important. Really simple things like showing up on time. That's really important to me. Being available, and I really struggled with that. Not in that time period, my entire life, I've struggled if I'm not on a really set regiment to just show up to places on time. And it's not due to lack of being ready. In the article, I talk about how in college, I got put on what's called a decision day at Sam's, where they basically send you home and ask you to determine whether you want to keep the job or not, because I'd showed up late so many times. And I was so angry at myself because my roommate, when I was talking with him about this, he's like, you get ready and you just sit on the edge of the couch until it's too late to possibly make it to work on time. And then you leave. Like, why do you do that? And I didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't know. That I struggle with that, and it's so frustrating. And when you couple that with, like, sometimes I would just get overwhelmed by sensory things going on around me, like in a crowded restaurant or at a concert, and I would just become like almost irate, like this feeling of like my skin crawling, and I'm just angry and I'm riled up. If you've ever been with me in a situation where I feel like I've lost total control, I can immediately go to anger very quickly. And I hated those things about me because that's not the kind of person that I try to be. I'm constantly trying to get better, and I'm constantly trying to be a good communicator and be dependable to the people who count on me. And when you can't do simple things like pay attention at work or get there on time, it was just unacceptable to me. And I started to think I had these character issues, but I couldn't fight them. I could not fight them through sheer willpower alone. So going through counseling, we were able to identify, like, you most likely have ADHD. And I set up some doctor's appointments earlier this year to get in with some ADHD specific doctors. Did a verbal exam with the first one, and she's like, yeah, I have medium to high suspicion that you have this. And then went and took a computer test, and kind of in the environment I'm sitting in right now, like looking at my webcam, they made me sit in this chair, and they put this like headband on me with a silver medallion, like right at the top. And the camera in front of me just keeps track of the medallion and is kind of on this quadrant, tracking like where my head is at all times, right? And then they give you this clicker, and you watch a computer screen, and it shows shapes, and they walk you through how to take the test. And if you see two shapes that are the same color and the same shape, one right after the other, you click the button. And if it's a different shape, you just wait. And when it comes back around and you see two of the same ones, you click the button. This goes on for 20 minutes, right? Now, for a normal person, a neuronormative person, that's a long time. That's a long time to sit there and look at a computer screen and like click something. For a person with ADHD, that's an eternity, right? It brought me right back to thinking about all those panicky feelings about giving STAR tests when I was a teacher. I literally almost quit my job every year when I had to administer a STAR test, because for 5 hours I had to sit in a room and I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything to entertain myself. I just had to watch 30 kids take a paper test, which is like torture to me. That's horrible. I cannot do that anymore. That was a large reason for the burnout that I had in that career field. So I take the test, and when we get out, they show you your results compared with the results of people your age, like males and females that are around my age, around 31 years old, and kind of how they perform on that test. And for the neuronormative people, their quadrant just has like this dark circle in the middle of it, right? And mine looked like a big scribble, because they were like, these are some big movements. Like, what were you doing? And it was when I'd gotten bored during the test, and I'm scratching my head, and I'm looking, a baby cries in the exam room next to me, and I look over there. I just get bored and start spinning in my chair. So it tracks that movement part, and then they go over how you answered the test, like how you responded to the clicks you were supposed to do. And basically, in the peer group, theirs is kind of this straight line, mostly green, meaning they're mostly clicking the right answers. They miss a few, but for the most part, they're kind of staying in line. Their response time stays measured. They're kind of going at an even keel. Mine was just like a scatter plot, like the rainbow. It was just red here. They had these clear dots to show that you just didn't even answer. And then there were a couple green ones. But she shows me in the test, like, halfway through, you just totally got bored of this, and you kind of checked out and started just randomly clicking when you thought you saw a shape in your periphery, right? So when I left, I laughed. That was funny, because I was like, that feels very indicative of how I feel inside. Like, this test, I feel like, captures the ongoing motor that I have going in both my brain and my body. And it made me feel this source of relief, because now a lot of those behaviors that I've blamed myself for years and years and years, I get to kind of sit down and untangle some of those and, really think through, like, how being a neurodivergent person, I've been put in a situation where I'm asked to make myself closer to neuronormalcy, right? So when I think back to all those report card comments I got growing up, like I asked my friends one day, I said, did y'all ever get those comments at the bottom of your report card that said like talkative in class, disrupts other students, does not stay on task? And they were all like, no. I was like, I think I had those on every single report card I ever got, right? And so this diagnosis helped me go, okay, you were doing the best that you could. And I've never received any kind of like training, therapy, any kind of skill-based learning. I've never had anything to help me deal with that. It's largely been self-medication or things that teachers have suggested that I do that have helped over time. But yeah, it was this really kind of like start of a forgiving process for me to be like, hey, it's still important that you show up on time. Now let's take this diagnosis and go get you some steps to always do that. It's really important that you're a good listener in conversations and you don't overrun people when they're talking. Let's get some things in place to make that a possibility, right? Thank God I'm married to an occupational therapist who's very good at what she does, and she's actually taking an ADHD course right now. So she's able to help me with a lot of these things and really help me understand how to function and how to plan things out. Like right now I'm doing phenomenal in school because Bailey has really helped me kind of lay out my workload and like think about it in certain terms and kind of like, have a strict cadence about like when I take care of assignments. And that's really helped me stay organized and given me the second half of the week to go back through and just check my work for all of those little mistakes that I make because I miss things due to ADHD, right? So I don't know what the next step looks like. I'm looking into avenues for how I can help this community. I'm constantly trying to make better learning content and more learning content. It is difficult being in school and working and doing apartment life stuff. Bailey and I are event coordinators for our apartment community. And that's a lot. Like we have a very full schedule, but it's important to me that I start to spread messages like this to help those out there who are not neuronormative, those who are neurodivergent. And the hope is that one day we have a world where we're not asking people with brains that function or are made up differently to kind of assimilate into one thing, because being a human is not one thing, right? Like I got in so much trouble in school for like standing up or like walking around the room. I work from home now and I can do that. When I worked in the office, I have a stand-up desk, right? When I go into the office now, if I want to walk around, go to the break room, go outside, no one cares. Like no one questions me. They're just like, as long as you're getting your work done, fantastic. So the hope is that we start to bring some of that into like schooling and we start to bring some of that into workplaces. And I'm really looking at all the different options, but I wanted to start here. I wanted to kind of share my experience with this. And the hope is that from here on out, I start creating content, continuing my computer science content, continuing my instructional design content, but really pulling in this idea of like, how do we make neurodivergence not this weird out there kind of thing? And how do we help students that are struggling with that become really successful? Because in a lot of ways, it can also be a superpower. My love of reading, I have missed the bus when I was in school many times because I would get so absorbed in a book. I would hyper-focus and I would read 5, 6, 7 chapters, look up, and it's 5:30 and I've missed the bus and I have to call my grandma or my mom to come pick me up. And they just laughed. They just couldn't believe that. How you were reading a book and you didn't hear them call your bus. I'm like, yes, I was so into it. So I want to help students, I want to help kids, I want to help adults who are struggling with these type of things realize like you're definitely not alone. And then like medication isn't the only way to treat it. I'm not going to be treating my ADHD with medication because that's not going to fit my specific needs. I have mixed type ADHD, meaning hyperactive and attention issues. And I'm not going to treat that with medication. I'm going to continue to treat that with some really brain science backed, some like neuroscience backed strategies for like keeping myself organized, keeping myself aware of what's going on. And so I just wanted to share this with you. I wanted to let you know that I'm looking at avenues to start helping with that. And I want to hear from other people who have gone through this. I'm constantly looking into people who are out there making great content for those with ADHD, for those who are helping out in other areas of neurodivergence. And I want to help build a community or become part of a community where that is really prized and like celebrated, because this isn't something I asked for. It's not something that anyone would ever ask for, but it's who I am and it's how my brain works. And I'm starting to like love that part of me. And I'm starting to kind of lean into the things that are the superpower of this disorder, while I try to mitigate a lot of the things that come with it. So I wanted to share that with you. Read the blog. I'm going to be posting it on social media. I feel like I'm very real in there. I don't tell everything about, my story, or else it would be way too long. But I feel like I communicate the point that, it's time to kind of move forward and really have like this redemptive arc in this long thing that I've struggled with in my brain. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. All of you who watch my content regularly, I'm working on getting it out on a more regular schedule. And as that comes out, if you're, liking and subscribing to the channel, then you'll see it. So fantastic. Thank you so much. And you all have a great day.